This day is really important, and I'll tell you why. I remember when I was in Colombia with the Vice President of Colombia, first woman of African descent as a vice president in the entire Colombia for all its history. And it was really a seminal moment because we spoke about the fact that it was so important to recognize the specific challenges that Black women face, women of African descent, across the diaspora. It's one thing to be from Africa and have that ownership. It's a completely different experience to exist within a milieu where you're not the majority, where you're seen as different. And so this has been a real, amazing accomplishment by the Vice President to pull this together and have it happen in less than 2 years. And I'm really excited to celebrate this International Day for Women of African Descent because it, for the first time, recognizes that there's a special place and a special experience that women of African descent, especially in the diaspora, have that others don't share. We have so many initiatives in ITC. I know that there are lots around the world. I think the first thing is to recognize that women of African descent have come into a system which in a way is already skewed against them. First, you have difficulties with women generally, and we've addressed that through our She Trades program and several other programs for women's economic empowerment. But then we have to recognize that there's intersectionality, the intersectionality of gender and race. And those two together can become a much more difficult obstacle in achieving economic empowerment. But what does it mean to be discriminated against by virtue of your gender? But also, what does it mean to be discriminated against on the basis of your race? And those two together create significant storms for many women. And so what we try to do is we look at the specific arena within which these women operate. Most of them are in marginalized communities. Most of them do not have the opportunities or had the kind of access to finance, the access to land, the access to the means of production that so many other people have experienced or have inherited. Then we look at the other issues with respect to education, with respect to social mobility. So what we do is we design programs that are fit for purpose, that are specific to the particular needs of that constituency, and try to ensure that they're able to have access to these things. One of the things that we're doing, we're having a SME ministerial next week in South Africa. And one of the areas we are looking at is how do we help women access finance through the various methodologies that exist and utilizing the kinds of systems that already exist in countries like India, Costa Rica, South Africa, and so on. But we have specific measures and we'll be happy to share more about that with you. I remember a story that was told to me many years ago actually it was by a historian, Sir Hilary Beckles. And he was opening an international trade program that I had designed to put at the University of the West Indies. It was a Master's in International Trade Policy 20 years ago this year. And in his opening remarks, he spoke about that people tend to separate trade from history. And I thought it was interesting because I said, what does a historian know about trade? But he then had a way of weaving it. He said, the issue is that a lot of people don't recognize that the French traded Martinique for Canada because Martinique was so rich, because it grew sugarcane, that it was worth more to them than Canada at that time. And therefore, the issue of looking at the historical context of where Black women and girls have come from, what their specific experiences have been, and how those juxtapose with the history of their lives and economic empowerment can't be separated. So we have to look at how do we ensure that trade serves economic empowerment for women and girls of African descent who have been marginalized for centuries, for decades, who have come through systems of, oppression, of losing their identity. But trade can be a significant lever to raise them from poverty, to provide the means of economic growth, to allow them to become independent, to become owners of their future, and to literally walk into a new space that gives them that independence and agency. There are two things. I think, one, women being decision makers in trade policy come from two angles, in my view. One comes from the policy angle, which is the engagement in government, the discussion forums, academia, and so on, the people who form trade policy. And then you have the private sector, the people who actually practice, the people who are engaged in the economy. There has to be representation in both. Because what we've found is that even when you carry out economic empowerment by virtue of strengthening small businesses, strengthening the private sector, doing the kinds of things that are practically engaging, if the policy framework does not exist to create an enabling environment, then it becomes skewed in a way that does not allow the kind of growth and the kind of success that we'd want. Which is why one of the things that IDC has been doing for a long time is working on the gender aspect of trade policy. And we've been doing that for the WTO. We've been doing that looking at various agreements and how those agreements have to take on a gender lens. Because no matter what we say, trade is not gender neutral. There are decisions that are made that actually impact women differently than they impact men. And so it's important that we look not just at the private sector side and how to empower women through various mechanisms like startups and investing in women-owned businesses and the She Trades program, but it's also important to ensure that on the policy side, on the formation of the laws that actually enable women to inherit property, to have title, to own land. These are significant obstacles to women actually being able to engage in the economic prosperity that is available to any country. My personal message to girls of African descent is that you're beautiful, that you matter, that your hair is fine, that your skin color is incredible, that your shape is perfect, and that you are designed by an incredible creator who made you just the way he wanted you to be. And don't let anybody tell you any different, and that you can become anything that you set your mind to. So, walk into it.